all the reviewers who said like Alaqua Cox
Nice.
doesn't have the chops as an actress, they can go straight to hell.
Nice job, kid.
The people who are dumping on it, I don't think they're dumping on the series, they're dumping on Marvel.
I did start watching Monarch last night. Which I'm enjoying so far.
Yeah.
Oh, it's that time again.
Man, it's always that time.
It's like Pee-wee's Playhouse. Hey, kids.
Yeah, it's like, what's up, Mr. Fireman? So you watched Echo and you started Monarch. How do you like Monarch?
I'm only one episode into it, but I'm digging it so far. It
really picks up when Kurt Russell shows up. When Kurt Russell shows up, it's like, yay! Because although I think the actors are fine, my take on it, I've enjoyed it, is that it's really hard for me to kind of care about these young people and their storylines. And I'm like, I kind of just like the old monster tracker guy. Thank you. So when he shows up, I'm like, woohoo! Less soap opera, more big monsters, please.
Yeah.
I say that when I go to most restaurants. Less soap opera, more giant monsters, please. Thank you.
It's the original lyrics, a little less conversation, too.
You are on an Elvis kick. Speaking of what we talk about on this podcast a lot, he was a huge comic book nerd.
Was he? That's great. I know he was a Monty Python fan. I didn't know about the comic book thing.
Since a kid. And he based his look, honest to God, the haircut and all of it, especially later when he went into the capes, it's all based on Captain Marvel Jr. Basically, not Captain Marvel Shazam, but his...
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Specifically, there was this is nerdy. Mac Rayboy was the name of the comic artist who drew Captain Marvel Jr.
Please tell me that's his real name. Mac Rayboy?
It's Raboy. So it could be Raboy. I've never heard it actually pronounced, but Rayboy sounds good to me.
After you informed me about Matt Fraction last week, which is a made-up name, but that's not his real name. This one sounded like another one of those, but sorry.
No. I mean, as far as I know, back in the 40s, he's like going, yeah, my name's Rayboy. He drew in a completely different style than C.C. Beck, who drew Captain Marvel. Yet, of course, he's like the young sidekick. So Captain Marvel Jr., Mac Rayboy drew slightly more realistic. Really good artist, if you look him up. But you look at those pictures from like 1941, those comics that E would have been reading as a kid, and you just see Elvis, the tall collar, the short cape, the same pompadour. And so basically Elvis, even the black hair, because Elvis dyed his hair black. Elvis was basically cosplaying Captain Marvel Jr. for his entire career, which I love. I got no problem with that. I think it's awesome. It'd be like me going like, now that I'm a rock star, I'm going to dress up like Carl Kolchak, in a seersucker suit. And be like, no one gets it, but I'm dressing like another character.
Yeah.
So Elvis was a Captain Marvel Jr. fan.
Elvis has left the building.
Okay, so anyway, back on topic. Monarch, you're enjoying one episode in, but you watched all of Echo, which is easy to do. It's 5 episodes.
Yeah, very easy to do, yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, you liked it. Okay. I was wondering where both of us were going to come down on this. I enjoyed it too.
I mean, is it... No, this is what I read from some people reviewing it, and I did not read reviews till after. John is aware of this too. People critics seem to be ready to call everything Marvel does now the worst thing they've done.
Yes.
Or a misstep or something like that. I mean, I was seeing things where they're basically saying, well, Marvel did get grim and gritty. They promised us that. We got it. But who cares? Or it's grim and gritty, but they kept saying it was a spotlight thing where you didn't need to know Marvel continuity. Oh, yeah, you do. And I'm sitting there going, did you guys watch the same thing I did? Because it's a fully contained 5-episode miniseries that the first episode does throw some backstory at you. It does include, spoiler alert, by the way. If you guys haven't seen Echo, I'm about to spoil.
Spoilers all day long from this episode.
Because it does include Hawkeye and Daredevil, and it shows you where she fits in, I guess, into that world. But it's not like you needed to know. They just show she sees her father killed by Ronan, aka Hawkeye. Daredevil stops her on her first mission, and she holds her own against Daredevil, and Kingpin's like, damn, girl. I love the way he goes, none of my men have been able to stand up to him the way you did. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. Anyway, so other than that, she is quickly back into her own story, which is in Oklahoma. And even though Kingpin's a big part of it, it's not something you'd be lost. You'd be like, all right, New York crime boss, and she's his kind of adopted daughter, and they have a conflict. The end. Sorry you guys couldn't keep up. You've got to know decades of Marvel history. No, you don't.
Yeah.
No, you don't. But if you do know it, it's pretty cool. And they change stuff for the show, too. Again, when Marvel changes stuff, it's usually smart. Their powers are different, but...
That's what I was wondering because you usually don't like when they change stuff that dramatically. It's a pretty dramatic change of her powers, from what I understand.
It is.
And I'm not familiar with the comic character at all. I had to look that up, and I was like, oh, that's not her comic.
I only know her through some appearances because, I think she debuted 90s, and it was a time where I was not reading a lot of mainstream stuff because it was also not a lot of independent comics because the 90s were a terrible decade for comics. It was so ridiculously grim and gritty and all that nonsense, and I was tired of it.
Superman had a mullet.
Superman had a mullet, but I was still reading Superman. Come on, they killed him. He came back. That's all you need with a mullet. And no one sat there going like, Clark Kent has a ponytail now. Superman has a mullet. I never see that ponytail and that mullet in the same place at the same time. But Echo is a good character. It's just that, to me, she was not so intrinsic that if they were going to change something, I'd get upset. Plus, like I said, the changes are smart. Her powers in the comics are basically the same as Taskmaster. So I could see why they'd go, we already have a person who can examine someone's fighting style and then immediately echo it or immediately duplicate it.
Yeah.
So that's her in the comics. The idea, which is much more meaningful that they came up with the TV show, is that she is an echo of generations of her people, specifically strong female warriors of the Choctaw people, which they also changed the tribe. Was I upset that they changed the tribe? No, because I'm part Choctaw. So I was like, woohoo! I felt represented. I felt seen, Chad, as a 134th Choctaw.
What was her tribe in the comics?
Cheyenne.
Okay. Did they have they said why they changed it? Was it just because Cheyenne tribe didn't refuse to cooperate with Marvel?
Yeah, they was like
Choctaw's like, come on,
the Choctaw.
We got you.
I don't know. I would like to see what their thinking on that was.
Yeah.
And I did keep. Okay, the nitpicky thing is I kept waiting for her at some point to get the white handprint on her eye. She doesn't have like a necessarily comic outfit that you'd be like, that's not her costume. But she's always had this white handprint that she puts herself on her face as like war paint sort of thing. And that didn't show up in the series at all. But I did notice throughout the series all these handprint iconography they had all over the thing. I'm like, all right. And her powers resonate through her hands. I was like, oh, that's cool. But yeah, they just rethought the idea that she is an echo. Nice idea. Of all these previous generations, and that she has the power to use their strengths, their cunning, whatever it is, but also she has the power to heal deep wounds, as in like psychological wounds, which comes in really nice at the end, where Kingpin's strength, the entire thing that is his entire psyche is built on this pain, and she was threatening to take that away. So the whole thing of, what did you do? When she basically heals him and he realizes that will make him weak. I was like, oh, that's great.
So what, do you think there'll be any consequences from her doing it? Besides the fact he's leaving her alone now? Like,
no.
he's going to stay the same.
Yes.
Right.
And they did. You saw the button scene, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that I do agree with one of the critics is like one of the critics is like, that doesn't tell us anything. That's like really cheesy screenwriting and doesn't lead to anything else. And I'm like, I did think it was very cheesy to have him sit there on the plane and suddenly go, what? The mayor's race for New York is wide open?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, that's dumb construction. At the same time, Kingpin did become mayor of New York in the comics at one point.
Right.
So did J. Jonah Jameson, but we're not going there yet.
Watch out.
But yeah, so I think the consequences are basically we're going to see how it pays off in Daredevil Born Again, because that series is coming up. And this was very much like a prologue because it's leading to that. And I cannot wait.
That was the thing that was most striking about it to me, was that it very much is a return to the tone of the Netflix Marvel
yes,
in a big way. I mean, really the only thing in this stuff that was leaned more towards Marvel were, all the prologue with the ancient Choctaw predecessor.
Yeah, the creation myth.
Right. I don't know if they're just supposed to be like they're gods, like the Asgardians are, in that kind of way. They're from another dimension. That was one thing I was a little frustrated. I was like, I know that was their myth, was the cave that they escaped from. We didn't really know why did the cave collapse? What's going on there? And
well, my question with that is, are they actually trying to introduce Choctaw gods into like their mythology? Like, would they have shown up at that big meeting of the gods that we saw in Thor Love and Thunder? I hope not, because they would have been like, God damn it. Or was that just these people? But then again, I got to say, when you watch What If Season 2 and you have Kahori, her people's myths are very much tied into like a multiversal, pan-dimensional. So it's very possible we were seeing something actual instead of symbolic. But regardless, I just love the fact that when that thing started, I watched episode 1. I didn't know she had been changed to a Choctaw, and I'm watching because my mother is very proud of any of our Choctaw heritage. She's sitting there going, I mean, she wasn't, but I sat there going like, oh, that's the Choctaw creation myth. I like knew what they were doing. And I was like, but hold on. And then she's revealed to be Choctaw. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And then I think it's mainly just possibly symbolism, or maybe the Eternals will be, hanging out with the Choctaw gods at some point. Dude, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. And I was like, this is cool. This is very Marvel-y to have this, alienish thing tied to, a people on Earth. So that was fine. There just wasn't much. They kept referring to the myth, but it was like there isn't really much explanation as to why. Yeah, they say the echoing thing.
Yes.
But where did the powers come from? What is that about? It's like they didn't really dig into that so hard. And I was like,
it's true.
I would be, if I was Echo, I'd be asking those questions. It's just one of those frustrating things. Is like, would you just ask her?
One thing I think
is it?
One thing I think that would be okay if they never do it, because strangely, it's not for us to know. And I know that seems weird in something like a comic book universe where you can sit there going, the Tesseract was actually one of the Infinity Stones and blah, 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 blah. But in this case, culturally, she doesn't need to ask those questions, because culturally, she and her people know exactly who these figures are and where that power comes from.
That's true.
And so therefore, we may never know.
Right.
And we just accept it, and that's how Echo works.
You would have to have the classic exposition set up where there's a character going, "Oh, what does that mean?"
Well, who
even
knows?
if they should know what it is. What? Like the worst exposition.
Yeah, like Biscuits, her cousin's like going, "You could do what?" I liked Biscuits a lot. And of course, I liked that since there is this the last few years, we've had a lot of really awesome Native American actors, actresses, TV shows. Their representation is coming up, which I think is great. But because of that, I just sit there going like, you'll recognize it's like a lot of the same faces. I'm sure there's a wide variety of talented actors of different tribes, But it's like, oh, there's Graham Greene again. Awesome. Love to see him always. And he's not Choctaw, neither is the lead actress. But some of the cast members were. And Tantu Cardinal, who played her grandma, was Graham Greene, played Graham Greene's wife in Dances with Wolves decades ago. So they get reunited as a husband and wife in this. I was like, oh, that's cool. And Devery Jacobs, who played Bonnie, and by the way, I don't have these names memorized. I've got the page open because I know them and I enjoy them a lot. She's the voice of Cory. She's from Reservation Dogs. So in a weird way, it's like, oh, the two Marvel, well, sadly, the only two that we've met, Native American characters, are right there on screen together. It's pretty cool, even though she's not playing Cory in Echo. But anyway, so, and I think all the reviewers who said, like, Alaqua Cox doesn't have the chops as an actress, they can go straight to hell.
Nice job, kid.
There were people that going, you can tell she's, they found someone who fit, but at the same time, she's limited. And I'm sitting there going, she held the screen every second with no dialogue, with just her eyes, her expressions, and her ASL. Like, geez.
Yeah, that just tells me they weren't paying attention to the story. I mean, she's emotionally crippled. She has been through hell.
Yes, and
she's been dragged through hell.
She's fighting the urge to soften, to actually return to her roots. She's fighting it the whole time because of all that bitterness. And so, in other words, I thought the series was really well done. And the people who are dumping on it, I don't think they're dumping on the series. They're dumping on Marvel. I think there is blowback. I don't think even critics are able to look at a Marvel project and take it on its own terms. They are basically waiting for the wave to pass so they can be right, that they predicted, like, this was the end of this thing. And I'm sitting there going, like, look, Marvel hasn't done all genius. They're not all masterpieces. It's entertaining stuff. And the thing I respect about them is that we have now, finally, with Marvel admitting that the Netflix shows are canon.
Yeah. Just exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting, but it's just like
you can see it in this one too. They draw directly on events from the Daredevil series.
It is not too surprising, but as John and I agree, it is really awesome that right after Echo, they officially announced that, oh no, Karen Page and Foggy, the same two actors they're coming back. It's all canon, and I'm like, yeah.
And I heard some about this. I think this is largely conjectural still, because I don't know how much of this is confirmed to be true. The story right now is that apparently during the writer's strikes, Feige, who had been previously just tied up, he had time during the writer's strike to review what the Daredevil people were doing, and that's when he put the kibosh on it and shut it all down.
It does seem like it was something. He goes, "Wait, what? What do you get?"
Because they got almost halfway through filming the first season, and he's like, oh no, we got to stop this right now.
Oh no.
Fire everybody. I'm coming. I'm be there in 5 minutes. Just stop everything.
Yes.
Yes. And so I'm wondering how much of that, because now they've made this announcement finally. Oh yeah, they're canon. It's canon. Just forget about anything that we were hinting at before. It's all canon.
I love it.
I'm just wondering if he was looking at this and this. Oh no, because this is
I think it's
way
also
off rails.
Yeah, what a lot of people say is them reading the room, and which is not just him seeing what they were up to, but also listening to fans who have been saying, like, there was absolutely nothing wrong with this Netflix shows, except for, of course, Finn Jones needed a little bit more time to learn how to be the living Iron Fist. But they fit nicely into that universe if you let them. And so they're like, okay, because people loved, I did, and John Bernthal's Punisher, Mike Coulter's Luke Cage, Kristen Ritter's Jessica Jones, all day long, man. So, yes, more please.
Yeah.
So
I'm wondering if, because they were the way that Marvel released Echo raised a lot of eyebrows, and And I think, I think that's what one of the reasons, not just because everybody's bashing on Marvel in general, but people were poised to hate on this because they're like, oh, they don't have any faith in this. But there was also a report too that they were originally going to be like 7 or 8 episodes, and they trimmed it back. And so there was a lot that they cut out, which kind of makes sense because it does feel like there's some threads are a little loose, little not completely tied together.
Yeah, maybe.
So I'm wondering if the stuff they took out was like, this doesn't fit with this new corrected direction we're taking.
Interesting. Or they really just wanted to make something extremely tight, which I think they did.
Because I noticed that Kingpin is kind of, at least in this show, they kind of reined back. He was portrayed as being like the comics, kind of superhuman strength and all that stuff in the Hawkeye show. And this one, really, he's just kind of back to being a normal, well, not normal, but more like his Netflix version. He's not being thrown through walls and tearing car doors off of cars and things like that.
I don't know. We'll have to see if they find some way to explain that, or if they just don't. And that he will be as strong as he needs to be. Oh, I know.
He did survive a gunshot to the face. That was the part I was like, the first time they showed him in the hospital and he's breathing labored.
Yes.
And he doesn't even have an oxygen thing on. I was like, shouldn't he be on oxygen?
Well, it's months later.
Yeah.
But I kept sitting there going, because in the comics for some period of time, he was blind. That was Brian Michael Bendis during that run where that was, oh, now you know what it's like. I'm Daredevil, haha, and you're blind, haha. And I was sitting there going, please don't give him an eye patch. We can't just have everyone in the MCU with an eye patch. That is Nick Fury's thing. So I was happy that when the bandage comes off, it's like, oh, he's got a bad scar. Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine with that. That's fine. Just don't give him an eye patch. And they didn't. But I mean, we'll see how they decide to play him as superhuman or just a huge dude. And that to me is not as important as just they have gold in their hands with Vincent D'Onofrio. Mm-hmm. There are, I will say, three instances of dead-on perfect casting in the MCU. And actually, one of them's not an MCU. J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. Lifted right out of the comics, which is why they're like, okay, he's still J. Jonah Jameson, even though it's in this universe. Great, because it's perfect. Vincent D'Onofrio is Kingpin. I just can't imagine anybody else. I can't. Mm-hmm. No offense to Michael Clark Duncan, but I mean, that guy was in a bad Daredevil movie. Okay. And then the third one is Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark.
Yes.
Without that, you just don't have an MCU. So all of those are just like, yes, that is build on that. So I don't care, just as long as Wilson Fisk is everything we want him to be when he goes up against DD in Born Again, which I'm sure it's not the storyline from Born Again, the comic, but I hope they have enough of it in there because I love it.
And what I'm hoping they do in Daredevil Born Again, the new series, I'm hoping that they do what the Netflix series avoid, like deliberately ignored or just decided not to pay any attention to, which was the snap, because we've already seen in Echo, they do have scenes. They didn't really mention it, but there are scenes where Ronan is going around killing people and killing your father. That was during the snap, as we know from the Hawkeye show. So now we know that Daredevil, because that was around the same time, I think, when she fights Daredevil, he wasn't snapped. He's wearing a slightly different outfit, which was kind of interesting.
I think it's supposed to be kind of that early period.
Yeah, my guess is that they're going to put this. They're going to say that all this happens, like the snap happened after the season 3.
Oh, really?
Of Daredevil. That's my guess. The only way they could kind of clean up the because they never.
And then
even
when
mention
Matt Murdock comes back, he's like, "I want to try yellow, and I want to go bang She-Hulk."
Yeah, right. So I hope in the show they do kind of finally tell us, okay, this is how the snap affected these characters in Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah, I mean, I think
be nice
what
to
we're
tie
gonna
that thread through the show.
I mean, at least references. Yeah, because I mean, obviously, because you're sitting there going like, well, who? I still think, as much as I love the Spider-Man movies, the MCU Spider-Man movies, just it's like, oh, that's nice that his aunt, his best friend, it's like, MJ, they all got snapped out and they all come back. That's great.
Mhm.
So it's only people he didn't know. I'm like, that's really
Yeah.
convenient.
They
It would
really
have been
need.
great if I thought it would be great if in that third movie that Aunt May now had gray in her hair because she didn't snap. And she's like, oh
Yeah.
God, I missed 5 years with you.
Yeah.
That would have been great. But no, apparently everybody he knew
Yeah.
went away, came back. He's like, oh, we'll just pick up where we left off.
That is, yeah, Marvel has been guilty of doing that way too often with their storylines after that. It's like there's so many great story potential ideas there that you could address.
Scott Lang is is technically kind of the only guy who had the real personal thing of he went away, but his daughter didn't. And he didn't get snapped. He was in the quantum realm, but he comes back and his daughter's grown up, 5 years. He wasn't there. Other than that, you're like, really? Anybody else? Oh, I guess in Black Widow too, we saw that whole thing of
Yeah.
yeah, it was pretty.
Really, the only series that's shown that, well, there's, I guess, well, we see the aftermath of it in
WandaVision.
Captain America and Winter Soldier.
Yeah,
that series we see these activists.
Well, we also see
reacting to the end of the snap.
Monica Rambeau dealing with her mom.
Yes, yeah,
that whole
coming
thing.
back. That was more of that, please. And people have said, and I agree with them, that they should
It
do a
would
whole
be-
series
Yeah.
that's based just on the blip. During that
It's an
period of time
amazing
between the two snaps.
trauma thing that they really, other than they addressed it very well in the films. I mean, I love the whole like support group thing that they had, and that was really good. But
Yeah.
but at the same time, you're like going, yeah, but it doesn't just pick up where you left off.
Yeah,
I like the thing in Black Widow where it's like, wait a minute, who are these people in my house? And they're like, we've been here for years.
Yeah.
And just like people showing back up going, what are you doing in my apartment?
yeah. But it'd be great. It would be kind of cool to have a show, not about zombies, obviously, but kind of in the vein of The Walking Dead. And, what's the other one? That show about the rapture where everybody disappeared.
Oh, The Leftovers. Yeah.
The Leftovers, yeah, where the show just picks up right after the snap.
Yeah, because
And
again,
you just
the thing
follow
of
the characters through the next 5 years.
planes falling out of the sky because, I mean, it would have been unbelievably traumatic.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, well, half the flight crew is gone and we're dying.
And they could pick
terrifying.
like some B-list Marvel characters who haven't been featured yet in the canon to kind of take the center stage in that show, and then have Captain America show up occasionally.
I like that very much. I will say this though. I'm not thinking about that at all with the Marvel Spotlight show that I'm currently writing.
Oh.
But it's similar in the fact that anytime I want to do one of these that I know is probably never going to be read by those people,
Yeah.
I want to pick a character that they won't do. I told you I started a Leapfrog script, right?
Yes.
And then She-Hulk had the character in it and they made him completely not what I was doing. I was like, oh, come on. And they turned him into a joke, which I was also going to turn him into a joke, but a character that you liked instead of being like this asshole bro guy. And I was like, that's not the character from the comic. I'm working on a Paste Pot Pete. Honest to God, I'm working on a script for Paste Pot Pete.
Paste Pot? I don't know this one.
Paste Pot Pete became the Trapster, but his first supervillain name was Paste Pot Pete, and he fought the Human Torch in his solo stories in like the 60s, and then fought the Fantastic Four, and he was always a joke. I mean, he has this gun that shoots a high-powered paste that makes people stick to things. And then even when he became the Trapster and is like, he kept being mocked for having been Paste Pot Pete. And I was like, I love an underdog, lame villain. And what if I do a show that's kind of like the kind of, he's not evil and he's just kind of pathetic and it's kind of funny. So I'm working on a Paste Pot Pete show. So I'm halfway into writing the pilot episode because I just like, I don't know. Maybe, hey, if someone out there that listens to our podcast is connected in any way to Marvel Studios, give Brendan a call. He's got a Paste Pot Pete Spotlight show. Because I think 5 episodes would be just enough. And I did my Tomb of Dracula script, which I'm still very proud of. That was also like aiming at, MCU TV show. because Tomb of Dracula, awesome. And if you do it as a period piece, it doesn't have to interfere with what they're doing with Blade. Because if you set it in the 70s, it's all prequel, because I assume Blade's probably going to go up against Dracula as, that's
And
part of the story.
That was a run of comics that was in the 70s?
Yes.
Tomb of Dracula?
Tomb of Dracula was actually their biggest selling horror comic. That was when Marvel and DC both realized that the comics code wasn't really that restrictive. They had stopped using vampires, werewolves since the 50s, since comics code came along. And in the 70s, they started going, well, what if we start bringing them back a little bit? Because they were trying to protect kids from gory, scary things. And then the 70s are like, fuck that noise. Well, they started doing like things that were not full. That's why you got Morbius. The living vampire was them testing the waters. Like, he's not a traditional vampire, and he's kind of a hero. And then, Werewolf by Night was them going like, well, he's okay, he is a werewolf, but only by night. And Ghost Rider was also them going like, Supernatural okay? Is Supernatural all right? But yeah, Tomb of Dracula was them finally saying, screw it, we're back in the vampire business, and here you go. And it is one of the great Marvel comics of the 70s. Marv Wolfman wrote that. I always love that Marv Wolfman is writing Dracula.
Hey, Marv, we got an assignment for you.
Yeah, and he rocked it. It was really great. So I had the idea of doing an MCU-based 1970s Tomb of Dracula show based on the old comic that makes reference to Hydra, and but not in huge ways. It's just like, Castle Dracula was bombed by the Allies in World War II because they thought it was a Hydra base and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, yay! I mentioned Wundagore Mountain. Oh, my finger's going through my brain. Anyway, we've already talked way too long, but I will say this: we are both. I'm speaking for you. We're just holding our breath because any day now they should be telling us a Fantastic Forecast.
Yeah,
they've been saying that for months, man. We really thought that New Year they would drop the.
The rumor mill is leaning very, very hard on
Pedro Pascal.
Pedro, yeah.
I love the guy. Is he my ideal Reed Richards? Not really. But still, he's so great. I mean, John Krasinski really does look the part.
Sure.
And I like Reed Richards that isn't really heroic looking, because he is supposed to be just this kind of wily scientist guy who can stretch. I always didn't like in the comics when you'd get some very typical comic artist drawing Fantastic Four and they draw him being ripped. And I'm like going, well, he is elastic. I mean, he could make himself look like Chris Hemsworth if he wanted to. But I think I always liked John Byrne drawing him as just a skinny guy. It's like Johnny Storm is more athletically built and he's the Human Torch. I trust them. Make it good. Make it good.
The one early rumor, I think Billy Crudup was rumored for a while. No, I do think he would have been absolutely perfect in that role.
Such a good actor.
He's maybe a little bit too old, I think, for.
But the thing is, Reed, just to make it creepy, there was always an age gap, by the way, between Reed and Sue.
Yes.
But at the same time, you would also then have to make the actor who plays Ben, because he went to college with Reed, he'd also have to be an older guy.
Yeah. What I would love, they need to get Billy Crudup into the MCU somehow.
They do.
Because he's too good.
He's so good, and he's got that great face. And come on, man. We're not telling you anything you don't know.
Yeah,
Marvel.
He was. There were a few things that came out of Zack Snyder's Watchmen that I treasure, because the casting was just so great.
The cast was
across the board. Yeah. But him as Dr. Manhattan, and of course Jackie. What was Jack? What's his name? Jackie
Earl Haley.
As Rorschach. God, fucking perfect.
I know. Yeah. And Patrick Wilson, Night Owl. It's all just, he did that well. I will give him total credit. You cast it well. Malin Ackerman, she was a fine Silk Spectre, but the real winner was Carlo Gugino as the original Silk Spectre. That was brilliant. Jeffrey Dean Morgan as the comedian. Jesus. It
looks right off the page.
Yeah. But it's an uninspired Snyder movie. We need to talk Rebel Moon at some point. Did we last time? I can't remember.
You mentioned it. Yeah,
I didn't like it.
Did you see? I forgot to mention this to you. Somebody put up a parody of that recently. Like, this is Zack Snyder's version of A New Hope. So they took actual footage from A New Hope and cut it to be like a Zack Snyder film with like way too much slow motion and
yes, slow motion and filters on it, like a lot of like dirty yellow filters.
Did you see that?
Blue filters? No,
and it goes on. Appropriately, it goes on way too long, and I had to stop watching because I was like, "Stop!" It's maybe what they're going for.
Probably. I mean, really, your default should never be, guys, just wait till you see my director's cut. Your default should probably be like, I made this. It shouldn't be like, oh yeah, they fucked with it. What you need is another 45 minutes in the director's cut. No, man, I'm sorry, it's not going to make it much better.
This was the most brilliant thing. They get to the scene where C-3PO and R2-D2 are in the pod.
Yes.
The escape pod.
Yeah.
Flying, and they extend that scene. C-3PO is like, it sounds just like Anthony Daniels. They inserted all this ridiculous exposition. It's a good thing that we escaped because blah, 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 blah.
That's a very Snyder thing.
It was so good. It was
that script. I mean, Snyder didn't write it. Of course, it was all his story idea. But at the same time, whoever his partners are, that's his thing. He doesn't have characters interact. It's all exposition dumps. And even though the cast in Rebel Moon is fine, I like a lot of the people in there, they are forced into these non-naturalistic conversations where it's just backstory. And I'm sitting there going, George Lucas was not a great writer. Oh no. But he was able to have those very two-dimensional characters of Star Wars become beloved by us because he had them interact. They bounce off each other. There's a Han line, and it's not going to sound like a Luke line, and you get to know their characters by the way they interact. The way that Leia talks to Han and the way she talks, they're all different, and it doesn't have to be highfalutin dialogue because that stuff is like a comic book, but you love those guys. Rebel Moon, I'm sitting there going like, they're just tropes. I'm sullen Asian samurai lady. Great. I'm roguish Irish guy. Yep. Okay. It's just dumb. I'm sorry, I didn't like it. Anyway, so sorry, Mr. Snyder. You do some great visuals. That's all I'm going to give you. You do some great visuals. And you cast the hell out of Watchmen. That's what we were talking about. Okay.
Yeah. So what's coming up? What is on the horizon?
It's going to be a very slow year for P-Saps.
Yeah. Obviously, well, for at least the DC and Marvel stuff, we got plenty of other wacky crap we can talk about.
Wacky crap.
Because of the writer's strike, it's going to be a while, I guess, before we see anything.
I don't know what this year has got. Well, even Stranger Things just started filming. Well, is it coming out next fall season?
Oh, the 5? Ghostbusters movie is coming out.
Oh,
right?
Yes. I'm looking forward to it. The trailer, great.
Yeah.
If the fact that it's no longer Zool.
Yeah. If it's not... Yeah, right. Yeah, if it's a new villain, and we still have the legacy cast is in it, so I hope that they're actually written into the story instead of just sort of a token appearance here and there. Yeah, they don't have to be in every scene, but we'll see what they have.
No, they have to be in every scene. What are you talking about? The one thing that threw me a little bit is that promo pic has Janine in the outfit. Annie Potts, she's with the other characters. And I'm like, that's like in Ghostbusters 2 when they had Lewis joining them. And I'm like, why? I mean, other than the fact that he had been turned into a terror dog and then rescued, he's an accountant. Why is he suited up? And I liked Janine in Afterlife because she just comes in as like, I'm in charge of the estate.
Yeah,
that makes sense. It's like he was a dear friend of mine. Yeah, great. But why isn't she now in a jumpsuit with a proton pack?
Hopefully, it's something she has to be talked into. Like, oh God, come on! Can't you get somebody else to wear this thing?
It may be a thing where in the movie it's like all hands on deck. We need everybody because Carrie Coon also is suited up, and you're like, okay, everyone gets to wear a jumpsuit and get a proton pack. Yeah. And actually, I'm down for that. Yeah. Give me a suit and a proton pack. Oh, a Ghostbuster. That's all I want to be. Now I'm sad again. Thanks, Giselle. Doop 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 doop. Yep.
Do you have anything for the Brendan Recommendans segment
Brendan
this week?
Recommendans. They're all old.
That's good.
As in, I've been doing catch up stuff.
That's our brand, yo.
Well, no, old as in like I just now got around to watching The Bear, and it's amazing. The Bear is unbelievable. It's
not
so
Cocaine
good.
Bear.
No, I did watch Cocaine Bear, and it was a lot of fun. But no, The Bear, which is it won all the Emmys this year. It is on Hulu, I believe is where I found it.
That's how you're supposed to say Hulu too.
Hulu.
Sorry, go ahead.
And it's just a comedy drama that is really well cast and acted. And in fact, the guy who plays the cousin of the main character, who was an actor on Shameless, cousin Richie on The Bear, is one of the guys they've been talking about is possibly up for Ben Grimm.
Oh,
he's actually taller than I would expect Ben Grimm to be, but it is all like, he's this guy. And I'm like, yeah, I could see it. I can see it. But anyway, so no, it's really great. Brendan Recommendans, a show that you've already seen. Everybody watch The Bear again.
Yeah.
Don't watch Rebel Moon because it stinks. Crapopolis, the cartoon, is very funny. That's the Dan Harmon cartoon, the most recent one he's done. And it has great voice actors in there like Matt Berry. And I finally watched The Goes Wrong show. Hilarious.
Haven't heard of that either.
That's British, and it's only from a couple years ago, but I had not heard of it because, again, like the Brits always do, they're 2 seasons, but they all total, it's like 10 episodes altogether. And all it is these theater performers are doing live theater on the BBC, and the shows go horribly wrong. That's the whole gimmick. And they are doing it for a live studio audience. Obviously, all the mistakes have been written in, but it's still very funny because they're looking at each other when props break. Or there's this hilarious thing where they're doing a Tennessee Williams type play called, each one's a different kind of play. One of them's called 90 Degrees, which is like, it's so hot. And they're doing bad Southern accents, and it's like Tennessee Williams. But at the... But they let you know up front, it's like, sadly, our set designer misread the title, and there's one of the sets for 90 Degrees has been turned 90 degrees, so they have to walk in, and they're sitting at a table, and they're trying to stay, but they're falling, and they like, pass me is like, would you like some lemonade? And they're pouring it, and it's going across because the cameras have been tilted, and I mean, it's really goofy prop comedy and situation comedy, but they're all very good, very British, and it's hilarious. So The Goes Wrong show, both seasons, I watched that, absorbed it, of course, and it's brilliant.
Cool.
So Brendan Recommendans, things you've probably already seen.
Okay.
Do you have any Chad?
No.
This isn't Bads?
We've
Chad,
already talked about
Bads.
Everything I've watched. Yeah.
No, I know. You need to get back out. You need to to stop working so much and play.
Okay.
Watch more TV. Go to more movies.
I still have 2 episodes have not been released. I don't know when they're going to be released, but if you would like to preview them now, they're on our Patreon. Are those the
ones where my Tourette's kicked in? And I was just like, you have to edit out every time I'm going,
it's taking me ages to edit through. No, there's an episode where we talk about The Black Hole by Disney's classic science fiction film.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an episode where we talk about Brazil, which I'm still working my way through.
Oh, we did that
I
2 years
up and
ago.
down I was going to get that out for Christmas. But once I got into it, I realized I'm not done with this yet. It's going to be worth the wait, I promise. But you can watch it on Patreon now if you want to see an early edit of it. But next week, we're going to have our friend Jerry Christmas. Jerry Christmas.
He's going to hate you so much.
Jerry Christman.
Yes.
Of the band Zeus's Pedals, which we were talking about in the Patreon exclusive pre-ramble of this episode. Brendan's old band.
Yep, and also producer of the Tesla City Stories, which we do out here. Yeah.
So we're going to talk Star Wars next week. I don't know what our angle is going to be, but we're going to try to dig into everything. We haven't talked about Ahsoka yet.
We haven't talked about Ahsoka.
Yeah, I think it would be fun too to go back and talk about our early as kids. You know how Star Wars hit us as kids. You know, because we're
Right in
all
the
around.
face.
The three of us are roughly the same age.
Yeah, we ought to do
So,
like we did with the Beatles and kind of do an overview
Yeah.
of the impact.
Yeah.
Because we were just like with Superman the movie, Star Wars, it just gets you, if it gets you at that age,
Mhm.
it's in our blood. It's in our DNA, like
And we're-
midichlorians.
Yeah. Because we I think you could call us the OG generation as far as
We
kids.
are. We
being,
are.
Star Wars fans.
I did not have the pre-sale of the toys because they weren't ready yet, and you had the
Yes.
IOUs from Kenner or whatever. I didn't have those, but
Oh.
I did the next year. I was lousy with Star Wars toys.
Yeah. Yeah.
But my parents weren't hip enough to go, maybe we should get them these certificates saying that they will eventually have a land speeder.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, let's talk Star Wars next week. That sounds fun.
Excellent.
All right. Bye,
All right, y'all.
everybody.
Thanks
Much
for watching.
love. Mush.
Thank
I
you.
know. Got a little personal there. I'm sorry.